I'll talk you through today's spread and then we'll go ahead and draw some cards for it. So today's spread is an Imbolc spread. So Imbolc is a festival in the Wheel of the Year. Again, very much based in or developed from the mythology of the British Isles. And at Imbolc, it's that time where it's cold, things are under the ground. You might just have some shoots starting to sort of poke up. You might still have snow. I know here where I live in the Algarve, we have a very different Wheel of the Year. So we don't have snow ever. But we have had a very cold snap this last couple of weeks. And one of the mythologies around the weather on Imbolc, so the 1st or 2nd of February, depending on how you choose to celebrate it, is that the Cailleach, the winter hag, the personification of winter, if it's clear on Imbolc, it's because she's out gathering wood for her fire, so there's going to be another 40 days of cold weather or bad weather. But if it's rainy or snowy on Imbolc, then it's because the Cailleach doesn't need to gather any more wood because the next 40 days are going to be much better weather. So we've got a weather mythology around this time of the year as well. And this figure of the Cailleach, she's this winter hag. She's a wonderful character. I can sense into her much easier than I can articulate her. But we have two positions in our spread based upon her. So one is crone wisdom. The Cailleach is a crone, and so the crone wisdom is the wisdom that comes with experience and the wisdom that comes with that knowing. So old wives' tales, that's part of crone wisdom. Why do old wives' tales so often hit the truth? Because they come from generations and generations of ancestral experience. So crone wisdom is our first position in the spread. What wisdom does the crone archetype have for us? And then bone rest. So again, very, very seasonal for this very cold time of the year when we hibernate, yeah. And that need to hibernate, we can feel very deep in the bones. So this kind of, it's again an ancient, still, restful energy that we invite in here today to share with us some wisdom. And the Cailleach at this time of year comes down to a sacred source, a sacred spring or a sacred pool, and bathes in the pool and is transformed. So the next position here is source. This stands in for the sacred pool, the connection with source, which brings transformation. And then we have a position here for transformation as well. And she is transformed once again into a young woman, sometimes described as a maiden. I don't really like the maiden mother crone framework. I think it's limiting, but she's transformed into a young woman again. And she comes sometimes in the form of Bridget, who I also call Briga or Brigantia. And Bridget is a young woman associated both with ancient tales, pre-Christian tales, and there are lots of Christian stories as well about Bridget. And the festival really on the 1st and 2nd of February is all about her and about this transformation from crone back into the young woman again. And the two positions then that we have here are the sacred flame. So Bridget has a sacred flame. In some stories, she's associated as a triple goddess. of poetry, of healing, which is associated with water, and of smithcraft, which is associated with flame. So again, smithcraft is a very, very sacred form of transformation, and one of the earliest magical arts. It's ancient alchemy, if you like. So the sacred flame is that of inspiration, transformation, alchemy, and also of devotion as well, because the flame, right up until the modern day, is used as a symbol of devotion to this particular goddess or saint, however you choose to relate with her. And then the other position that we have here is fresh spirit. So in our inviting in or experiencing of the crone archetype that we may have this time of year, then we do have this need for bone rest, for stillness, for hibernation. Crones can be very wise, and crones can sometimes feel tired, or that they've seen it all or most of it, and sort of perhaps get a little weary now and then. But after this transformation back into the young woman, then you get this fresh spirit, and so that's fresh energy, clear energy, enthusiasm, and also beginner's mind. So coming to something in a new way, in a way that is we're not bringing already all of that. Oh well, I have all the crone wisdom and I know all these things, and so I can prejudge my experience before I even have it. When we come with beginner's mind, we don't know what to expect, and so we're able to be in a different kind of a state of receptivity. So we're coming to things with a fresh spirit. So that's our sixth position here for today's reading. And I shall take a sip of water, and then we'll go ahead and pull some cards. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, today I'm using the Arthurian Tarot by Caitlín and John Matthews, which is one of my favourite tarots to work with. So I'll invite you to take a deep breath in and just ask to receive what you need. So there may be something you're working with or working through that you'd like insight or guidance on, or you might just be open to receiving whatever it is that the cards have for you today. So just coming into the reading from that place of being open to receiving what you need. And so we start with this position of crone wisdom. What crone wisdom do we have today? And this is the Grail Hermit. So known as just the Hermit in some decks. And this is a major arcana card. It's a lovely card. I really like it. This is someone who has withdrawn to do their own magical practice. So it's appropriate for crone wisdom. And in this particular deck, the Grail Hermit, the Arthurian tradition again is this it's this mixture of pre-Christian and Christian mythology, and really an exploration of how whatever we call things, the important things stay the same through all the different generations, all the different beliefs. And the Grail Hermit is this fusion of those traditions. And so you see here, the Hermit has this space set up. So they have withdrawn from other places, other spaces that might have a bit more going on. And they've devoted time and energy to their spiritual quest. And I think that's a really important or interesting piece of wisdom to come to us from this crone wisdom position, because we all have some kind of practice. Yeah, we might all be meditators, or we might work with tarot in some way, whatever our sort of spiritual practices are. We might have prayer or energy work. There's so many different practices. And we live in busy times, you know, and I very much feel this personally as a meditation teacher who works pretty much exclusively online. There is a tension between our sort of modern busy lives and the ways of being in the world that we have, and then our spiritual practices. And I mentioned last week, you know, for me, I have committed to or recommitted to doing one of my practices every day will be the same as a grounding practice. And I've had this wonderful good fortune to live somewhere where I can go out and I can sit under a tree or on a beach and really be in this sort of sacred space of the beings around us, the life around us that doesn't really care about the internet or you know, any of the other things that we can get very much locked into. And so I think some of the wisdom here from the hermit is that, you know, if you really want to dedicate your sacred practice, make space for it, make a sacred space in your life. So this can be a literal sacred space. You know, if you have the means, then by all means go off into the woods and build yourself a hut and sit there on your own. And I wish I could come and join you. But really, you know, we can make sacred space in our own lives in different ways. So we can make a space in our homes where we do sacred practice. We can make a space in our schedules, in our time where we do our sacred practice. And just remind ourselves that that is intrinsically valuable, that we don't have to be doing it in order to achieve something else, or in order to tick it off the list, even of like, these are things I've got to do today. I'm going to do my meditation practice. But just allow ourselves to have that experience with the intrinsic value. And also with the hermit is off on their own. So it's also a reminder that we don't necessarily need a lot of external validation. So, you know, we don't need other people to tell us we're doing it right or we're not doing it right, which sometimes people will say as well. If it is feeling like the right practice that's calling for you at the moment, then it is the right practice for you at the moment. And you don't need anyone else to affirm or confirm that. It's nice when they do, but you don't need that. It's okay to listen to your inner knowing and your inner knowledge. And that's another gift that the Grail Hermit has for us today. And then bone rest. So, you know, what really needs to rest right now? What does need stillness and hibernation? It's interesting that this will be in a pairing with that Grail Hermit card, so that we do really have this sense at the Kaliak end of this reading that we can withdraw, we can rest, we can take that moment to go inside. You know, it doesn't have to be all busy, and that's a way to be in alignment with the rhythms of life. There's something I've been saying to myself every morning as I draw my card of the day, and it's a reminder, and every time I affirm it, I'm reminded that I know it to be true. And that is that I am filled with vitality and I am aligned with my purpose, the rhythms of life and the magic of the universe. And I find that really helpful because sometimes, you know, I wake up and I do have a lot to do today. I have responsibilities, I have things that I have committed to doing or being present at. And so when I remind myself that I am in alignment with the rhythms of life in particular, you know, if it's a slow day, if things don't go to plan, that's okay as well. It's just part of the rhythms of life. So this crone wisdom is telling us, and this position of bone rest will also tell us, where can things rest? Where can you take that space and that time? And that is, I am filled with vitality. I am aligned with my purpose, the rhythms of life, and the magic of the universe. So the card for bone rest then, it's another major arcana card, and we've got the sun. So this is wonderful, and I love that this is coming out in this very seasonal spread. So we're still at a time of year in the northern hemisphere where we're moving from the winter solstice, which was about 5 to 6 weeks ago, and moving towards spring. And depending on where you are, you'll be feeling that more or less at the moment. But what we do have is this kind of return of the sun, which happens very gradually from that period of the winter solstice, when the sun is least present with us for the shortest time of the day, going right up to the summer solstice, when the sun is with us for the longest time. So it's a reminder that the sun is still in this process of returning, that, although the longest nights have passed, the sun is still returning, and the sun is a card of, I always see it as like, get out there and shine. So in this position of bone rest, it's like, well, actually, you don't have to leap out there and shine. You can just let it naturally happen, and it will naturally happen over the next, this is a tarot reading for the week ahead, but it's also a tarot reading for this time of year. So I will go ahead and say for the next months even, as well as the next days, it will naturally happen that you will come out a little bit more, and perhaps allow yourself to be seen a little bit more, allow yourself to be brave enough to shine a little bit more, because there is some courage in that sometimes that's needed. And that will naturally happen. You don't have to push it now. You can allow that to happen very naturally, very gently over the coming days, weeks, and months. And of course, the sun is also associated with children, including inner child work, and with artistry. So in many, many different traditions across the world, people who are creative artists, storytellers, singers, people who do the creative arts, or who bring through the creative arts, are associated with the sun, and with archetypes associated with the sun. So again, it's that reminder that if perhaps your creative project is going slowly and it's not happening all at once, that is, once again, it's very natural. It's a natural cycle, and naturally it will start to come together and become bigger and brighter and shine out for all to see over the next days, weeks, and months. So we have Crone Wisdom, the Grail Hermit, and Bone Rest, the Sun. We then have this next position, which is Source. So, I talked about this magical spring or pool of transformation, in which the kayak bathes and is transformed into Bridget, or the young woman. She is renewed almost. So what is it this week and in the coming times that will be as source to us and for us, that we can perhaps access even this week, and allow ourselves to bathe in, to welcome in any renewal that we might need. And just as I was saying that, something came into my mind, because Imbolc happens on the 1st, 2nd of February, and we've got something amazing happening in the skies this week as well, which you may have read about. So near the Big Dipper, the Great Bear, Ursa Major, in the middle of this week, at I think round about sunset and sunrise, there will be a green comet in the sky that hasn't been seen for something like 50,000 years. I have to check the exact amount of time. But some of the last people to have seen it the last time around will have been Homo sapiens like us, and some will have been Neanderthals. So that's just something very magical and exciting that's happening this week. And as I spoke about Source and the sacred pool of transformation, that popped back into my head. So just look out for that if you can in the skies this week. So Source, what is the spring in which we can bathe to become transformed or refreshed, revitalized this week? And we have Grail 9. So Grail, this suit is also sometimes called the Cups. It's the suit of the heart, of the emotions, of water, of flow. And I absolutely love this Grail 9. So you can see this great big cauldron that is here, sort of bubbling, steaming over a fire. And a cauldron is, in this mythology particularly, is a vehicle of transformation. There are lots of myths in which cauldrons are the means to transformation, sometimes by getting into the cauldron, sometimes by drinking something that's been in the cauldron. And also it would have been a very, in the Iron Age, it would have been a very practical tool. So people, like normal people, would have cooked on cauldrons as well. So it's very magical and very practical. And so what I see it as being here is this kind of source of nourishment for not just for one person or one family, but for a whole community. It's a great big cauldron. So whether that is a very nourishing broth or soup that's bubbling away, or whether it's a magical potion, and we need both in our lives, it's a reminder that there is enough for everybody. And so Grail 9 would be the 9 of Cups in other decks. And so in this position of source of, what transforms and renews us this week, what can we go and bathe in? I would say, both the nourishment of the body and of the soul, but also communally. So, spending time with your community, whether that's your immediate family, family of origin, chosen family, wider community, spending time with them, devoting time, like making time for them, and also finding, what are those sources that nourish both the body and the spirit of this community. And making sure that you're making time for those in your life. So, do you have something to bring to the cauldron, to come and mix in, to contribute to what's coming here? Do you have something that you need to perhaps take from or ask from the cauldron? And the answer to those questions will help you to find the source for your nourishment in life this week. Transformation then, what transformation is available to us as we get in touch with this source? And we have here Sword 4. So I love this, as again, this is a card of the sacred space in this card. You can see the Arwen, the sacred inspiration, shining through into this space, and then you have an altar on which is placed a sword. So the sword is the sword of leadership, but it hasn't yet been taken up. So again, just a reminder really that, it's okay to let things take their time, take their course in coming. And of course, the Four of Swords is traditionally associated with rest, with pause. So perhaps then for transformation, what we have here is an invitation to have that rest, and we do have this tension between the sort of the shining out and the community of the sun in Grail 9, and the rest and withdrawal of the hermit and sword 4. So I'd say firstly, this is about rhythm, allowing things to come in their own time, and secondly that the hermit is depicted here as, being very off and withdrawn in their own space. But in our real life, it's very rare, for us to be able to go off into the woods and not speak to anyone for a day or a week or a month or a year and a day or a lifetime. So perhaps some of that wisdom that's coming from the hermit, this is something that can be brought and contributed to the cauldron of the community. And perhaps anything that comes from this sort of communal space, from this cauldron, can be taken back and digested in this space. And so, of course, we all need, to different degrees, to have both community and to have our own space. And this reading is telling us that there is room for both this week. You don't have to commit completely to one or the other. But the overall message so far is definitely, with this Four of Swords here in this place of transformation, with the sun being in this place of bone rest, what we've got is a reminder to really, really, really let things take their time, allow things to happen naturally in their own time, and they are happening naturally. The world is, or the seasons, the rhythms of life are happening naturally. So things might feel a little bit slow at this time, but they're also gathering momentum. And one of the ways by which this momentum is gathered is by allowing that authentic, that real time for rest. And, as I said, the shape, you've got sacred inspiration coming in here in this Four of Swords. And so allow that to come in. And one of the ways that can come in is when we're resting. And I've found that to be true, certainly for myself as I'm creating. It's in my time off and my rest time that, like all these other ideas come in. And some of them then become things that I go forward and take out into the world, but they take their time, and they can't come without rest. And so then the final two positions that we have here, the sacred flame. So this is about inspiration, transformation, and devotion. What is our sacred flame this week? And a reminder that we tend our sacred flame within. And again, this is something that we can do for ourselves, and that we can also do in community. So the sacred flame. And we've got here Grail 6. So there are a couple of these cups cards or Grail cards in this reading. So what this is a reminder of, that there's a lot of heart stuff going on. Not big sort of heavy or difficult to ride emotions, but they're there nonetheless, and they're influencing us, and they're kind of with us. And to allow ourselves to tend the sacred flame of that. And then I love that this image has come here. As you can see, this water kind of flowing out from a source, perhaps a sacred spring of renewal. And I have seen a sacred well. I've made pilgrimage to a sacred well that looked very, very much like this. So I love that this came up for us in this reading, in this position. And so before going into any other interpretation, just because this is an Imbolc reading, we have a reminder that for Brigid or Briga or Brigantia, as well as the sacred flame, one of the sacred elements is water. So just as the Caitlín comes and bathes in this sacred pool, we can tend to our sacred flame this week, perhaps by going to water. So if you are lucky enough to have a hot spring near you, go and bathe in that, or even a cold one if you're brave enough. You might go and sit with running water. You might just make your morning shower into a sacred space for yourself. So the crone wisdom was the Grail Hermit telling us to create a sacred space for ourselves. And one of the ways that we create sacred space in our lives, it doesn't have to be about making a place, creating a physical temple or whatever it is. It can be about how we show up. And those of you with a mindfulness practice, we're very, very aware of this. So, perhaps today or tomorrow or all this week, as you are bathing yourself in whatever way, you have a shower or bath, take time to be mindful with it, to give thanks for the clean running water, to allow it to be something that cleanses you not just physically, but that sort of allows your energy to be refreshed and renewed, and welcome in whatever is brought in by this. So we can have our sacred space, and we can tend our sacred flame in the middle of our ordinary lives. We don't have to withdraw to find that sacred space. And of course, Grail 6, or the Six of Cups, is also often about nostalgia and the past and how the past affects us. So that could be something like doing ancestor work. That could be about, we've got the sun here, which can sometimes represent inner child work. So, maybe there's some inner child work that we could make space for this week. And it may just be about rediscovering things that have meaning for you, that you may have put down in the past in some way. Our final card then, fresh spirit. As we come from this place of the Caitlín and we move through source and transformation, what fresh spirit are we offered this week? How are we rejuvenated? And it's another Cups card, another Grail card, Grail 8. So you can see it's very similar actually in presentation to the Grail 4. I'll just hold them up together for you to see them together. You can see the colours, and the way it's presented is very, very similar, and yet different. So in the sword 4, we have a sword that is sort of lying, waiting to be taken up. So it's something that has not yet come to be, to realise its full potential. Here we have a grail or a cup that has been spilled, and this light that's kind of almost too blinding in this sacred space. And it's just a little reminder that we don't always have to be questing. A lot of this deck is based around the quest for the Holy Grail, and we're not all ready to find that Holy Grail or to take responsibility for it. There might be sort of other things that are going on as well. And of course, the Eight of Cups is a card that reminds us what is our path and also what isn't our path. So it may be that actually this week some insight might come to light that, where do you really want to be putting your energy? Because you might be putting your energy into something that's not quite your path. So one of the ways this can happen is that sometimes we can commit to something and, this is my goal and I'm going to make it happen. And then we get stuck in the making that happen. And we don't realise that actually that goal, that objective is no longer appropriate for us for whatever reason. And, and that's okay. It's okay for for what we want to change. So this is perhaps an invitation for insight into, what's had its time. What is that old crone? What's worn out and has had its time and is ready to be transformed into something new? So this can be about clearing out your energy, your space, your behaviours, reevaluating what do you really want and how do you go after it. So perhaps one of the functions of the sacred space that is indicated in this reading is a space of reflection. With this Hermit and the Four of Swords here particularly, and then this Grail 8, what do you really want? And is it still appropriate? Are you going after an old dream? Because if it's still appropriate, great, and go for it. But if it's an old dream, then perhaps you might want to make space in your life for new dreams. And this is a really, really good time of year to make that space. So that's our reading for today, and I shall give you a very quick summary before I leave you. So we have these 6 positions which represent the transformation of the kayak through bathing in the sacred pool into Brigid Briga Brigantia, the young woman. So Crone Wisdom, we had Major Arcana 9, the Grail Hermit. Bone Rest, we had Major Arcana 19, the Sun. Source, we had Grail 9. Transformation, we had Sword 4. Sacred Flame, we had Grail 6. And Fresh Spirit, we had Grail 8. And the deck that I've been using today is the Arthurian Tarot by Caitlín and John Matthews. And there are 2 or 3 Arthurian tarots, but this is the one that I really, really like. So the overall messages of this week's reading are about allowing things time, allowing things to happen naturally, re-evaluating and revisiting your sacred practice, and that that doesn't have to mean going off into the woods on your own. It can mean just bringing mindfulness to your everyday, to everything that's going on. Allowing yourself to have rest, trusting that the energies to bring whatever you're bringing into the world, trusting that those energies will come to you in rest, and help you to carry that forward. And with this sun being in the position that it is, there is a feeling that things will happen in their own time, and that there are some things which are already growing now that will come to get really bright and shiny in the world over the next not just days and weeks but months as well, as the sun moves through. At least here in the northern hemisphere, it's moving from the winter solstice to the summer solstice, but it's still quite early on that journey. There's time for things to come through. So allow yourself rest, allow yourself space, but remember that the things that are meaningful to you and your community are really, really special. So make sure that you are putting something in the pot in some way, and taking what you need from the pot as well. And then just tend to yourself, your practice, what you're creating. Remember what's important and reevaluate if you need to. You don't have to get stuck questing after old dreams. You can make space for new ones, and that's part of the transformation that's offered us at this time of year. So that's our reading for the week. Thank you very much for joining me.